badass business owners, let me ask you a question. What is profit first? What even is this? I get asked this question, or people will ask me what my thoughts are on profit first. So I thought what I would do is take a few minutes today and actually talk about it. First off, you have to understand there is a book called Profit First by a gentleman named Mike Michalowicz. And I'll put a link in the show notes if you would like to check out the book. But here's basically what this book is about and why it is often referenced and or recommended for small business owners. Basically what it's doing is it's really trying to plant a seed in a business owner's head that they need to make sure that their business is profitable. And if you think about it, that's what we talk about here on the show all of the time. As you are aware, I always say sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals profits. And what Mike's talking about is instead of putting profits at the end of the equation is to move it up closer to the beginning. So this way you take your profits first. So it would be sales minus profits minus expenses minus costs, stuff like that. He doesn't say it the exact same way, but basically that's what he's doing is he's saying, hey, you as a business owner need to make sure that you're able to take 1%, 2%, 10%, whatever profit you are trying to build in the business. The way I look at it is the other way. When we're pricing, we try to make sure that there's profit because we're looking at all four parts. We're looking at our sales price, we're looking at our costs, we're looking at our expenses, we're looking at our profit, and we're making sure that all of that is being taken care of when we price in the first place. So it's just different ways of saying it. What Mike has found through his time of owning businesses is that what we do typically is we do our sales, then we pay all our bills, and we go, if there's money left at the end of the day, it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I didn't make any money this week, which is what we talk about as well. Because so many times we think about the cost of goods, we don't think about all the money that we have to spend on expenses, and never mind the fact that we've got to pay ourselves. Mike's also big on the fact that you do take a wage, a livable wage. Profits are something above and beyond. So there's a lot in common there as well. Now, a couple things I want to pull out, because if you read the book, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it can get complicated for some people, which is why they tend to walk away or they don't fully implement it. But if you could pull out some of the best practices that are in the book and implement them into your business, you're going to find they're very helpful. And that's one of the big things that you want to do. So let me touch on two of them in particular because we talk about them here as well. And I want to explain a little bit more from his angle why you want to do this. Now, you've probably heard some people that have multiple bank accounts. One of the things that Mike does is he talks about the fact that you should have a bank account for all the different business needs. So you would have an operating account that only holds the money that's needed to run the business. Then you are going to have a tax account that you put the money for the taxes into. So out of sight, out of mind, and they call it at the inconvenient bank, basically saying, hey, put this at a different bank. You might recall that we've talked about that here on the show. It's what I do. My tax account is at a different bank. So this way, when I go to check my balances, I don't see that money and say, oh, it's mine. Because the reality is it's not mine. It is the government's. But he'll have you do 4 or 5 different accounts. So this way you pay first. The very first money you move is into your profits account. So that way you get that money. And what the thought process is that if you only have $100 left at the end, then you're going to make sure your expenses only cover that $100 and that you're not going to overdo it. So yes, if it's sounding like a budget to you, that's exactly what it is. It's basically changing the way that you budget your money. So you're just going to take that profit first, and then if you have money, you can spend it on expenses. And it really is to force you to start thinking about the money you spend in your business. When I look at it more from the angle of if you are making sure that profit is built in, you're going to make sure that you're priced right to begin with. And you're going to make sure that you're focused on reducing those costs and those expenses so that you can hit that profit goal that you have. So they're basically same thing, same thinking, to different ways of skinning the cat, if you will, to make sure that there's profits at the end. But it's more of a mentality change that you are putting profits first. So by having these different bank accounts, you're physically moving money around, and therefore you're more in tune to the money that you have because you're making sure it goes into the different accounts. And I highly recommend that if you are looking at this angle of it, that you read the book, because he's going to explain it way better than I am doing here today. But basically, that's what it is. You just have different bank accounts to help make sure that the money that you've budgeted for each of those areas have the money that's necessary to get the business through the month, including your own, because remember, you have your own personal account, and that's where your money's going to end up going ultimately when you take it out of the business. Now, what I like about this is it really does get your brain to start around the concept of saying, hey, I need to make sure that I maintain the amount of money necessary to pay my expenses and to pay my bills, but I'm not going to give it any more money than I need to give it. Make sure, though, one of those accounts that he's talking about is a savings type. He calls it something else. I can't remember at the top of my head, but there's a account that you're still building money up for, 3-6 months of built up retained earnings. So don't think that you're not still saving money in the business just because it's not in the operating account. It's more of just to keep your mindset correct there. Now, the account for taxes, like we said at the inconvenient bank, that's a huge one, because that's one that gets people into trouble all of the time. And a lot of businesses will fail because they failed to pay their business taxes. I was talking to someone the other day, and they are in deep financial doo-doo because they did not pay their taxes, because they did not save them as they went. And they had an extremely fantastic year, but they got to the end of the year, and guess what? They owed $70,000 to the IRS, and they did not have it. And that started a spiral of where they just got further and further behind because they were so busy trying to figure out how to pay the 70, but they were still busy. So therefore, they kept racking up another 70 right behind it. And they just never could get themselves out of the mess that they created. So it's really, really important that, one, if you get into that situation, that you see a tax specialist, because they can find ways to help you get back on track with that. But two, what's great is if this business owner had a tax account and made it a part of their routine monthly that they moved the money into that tax account, they probably would have had at least most of it, if not all of it, at that time. And I know, for example, when I get paid, I make sure that if I get a large check, I automatically move that money right then as part of that deposit. If not, I do it at the end of the month to make sure that I have it. I'd rather have extra money in my tax account, so at least I know I'm prepared, than to have nothing. I've been there. I've done that. Especially when you go from a employee mentality, when you leave corporate America or you work for somewhere else where they take your money out, because you don't even think about taxes. I mean, yeah, you'll moan and groan about it because it's coming out of your paycheck, but you don't have to worry about them getting paid. So a lot of times when people have been working for someone else for many, many years, then all of a sudden they're responsible for their own. They just don't have the habits down. And that's what Profit First is really trying to set up, is that you get into the habit of setting aside that money. It also works great if you have to do sales tax, because you can get that money out of your account and never put it in your account because it's not your money. When you're collecting sales tax, you are collecting for the city or the state, and you need to make sure you never touch that stuff, but you already know that. So to go back to the book, I think it's a wonderful book, and I definitely think it's something that needs to be on everybody's radar, and they should read it. And talking to business owners over the years, one of the things that I have found is that when people really embrace the concepts of Profit First and what he's doing, you can see them go from making no money or having no money to all of a sudden they have nice, healthy bottom lines of not only 10%, but we're talking 20, 25% in some cases, where just the year or two prior, they weren't having any. They went from really just taking whatever money was left over for themselves to now they pay themselves a livable wage based off of the work that they're doing in the business. And then they have profits on top of that. So the biggest thing I think that I want you to get out of this whole Profit First is, if you want to listen to the audiobook or read the book, definitely do that. You are going to learn a lot. But also start embracing the concepts, because if you embrace the concepts, you're going to price correctly and you're going to control those costs and those expenses. once again, it goes back to that sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals profits. And we say that over and over and over so that profits becomes part of the vernacular and what you're saying when you're thinking about it. So that way you automatically build that in. And it's more, that's what I love about Profit First, is it really just says, hey, look, this business needs to be profitable. You're not just a plumber. You're not just a dog groomer. You're not just a whatever it is that you do. All right. You are a business. So yes, you may install roofs, but you own a roofing business that has to be profitable. So whatever business you are in, that business has to be profitable. That's what you are responsible for doing. Yes, you are responsible to make sure that these customers are well taken care of. They get fantastic customer service, great quality. You owe it to your community to do what it is that you're supposed to do, but you owe it to the business and the owners of that business, whether it's you, a friend, a family member, a bunch of people, whoever it is, you owe it to be profitable. And that's what Profit First is really supposed to do for you, is to help you do that. Now, since you're listening to this, I'm going to assume you like podcasts, and I highly recommend the Profit First Nation podcast. It's one that they do in every episode. What they do is they talk about a different concept of Profit First. Sometimes they'll have people on there and how they use Profit First in their business. Sometimes they'll break it down. There's one part of the series, I think it's the very beginning, where they break down different aspects of the entire book, and it's definitely well worth it. I would go back to the beginning of Profit First Nation and really start there if you can. I think it's a fantastic series. Mike does show up in that, but one of his folks, I forget what her name is, but she does a great job hosting it. He has his podcast, but it's kind of veered off into all kinds of different things, and you get different stuff if you listen to his, but I would focus on the specific one for Profit First Nation. I think that you'll get a lot out of that, and I highly recommend it if you are a podcast junkie. I think that you'll get some really good tips in there. Once again, we just teach in a different direction, but the concepts are still the same. We one of the things that we really have in common with what they're doing and what I'm doing is that we put profits as a top of mind awareness thing for you, and that we make sure that you are making sure that the money is going to the places that you can make sure that you can pay your bills. And we both share the thing with the taxes. Am I a fan of the 5 accounts? I get it. I do think that for most people, when we barely can get our numbers keyed into our bookkeeping, I think it's a little much for many of you guys to manage, and not because you can't. It has nothing to do with that. I just think that if we add 5 accounts trying to balance it every single month, and I can't even get you to key in your stuff, that's a bridge too far, if you will. But I do think that if you make sure that you do have your basic stuff, where you have a personal account where you keep personal away from business, that's fantastic. That you have a savings account, retained earning account for the business, whatever you want to call it. So that way you continue to stockpile money for your business. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that having that operational account to run the day-to-day stuff for the business is fantastic. I don't think you need to have tons of money in there, but you should at least have a month or two in there so that you're always sitting good. And obviously I'm a big fan of the tax account for your taxes to be set aside. So there's some concepts that I'm really, when it comes to the checking accounts, I think 3 at minimum. I just don't want you to bite off more than you can chew. And I also don't want you to step away from the book because you start hearing about all these accounts and these things they want you to do, and you just kind of say, wow, this is way too complicated. I don't want to do it. I don't want that. I think this is a book that needs to be part of your arsenal. I think the E-Myth Revisited and Profit First are 2 of the most important books that you can read in your business to make you a better business person. So do me a favor, check them out if you haven't already. I'll put links actually to both of them in the show notes, but listen to Profit First Nation. I think that you're going to find that that's a great addition to your podcast listening that's going to give you some really great ideas. All right, with that, I am going to get out of here. I just was thinking about this a lot last night, and I wanted to make sure that I shared with you guys my thoughts. Now get out there and be the badass that I know you are, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye for now. Hey, badass business owner, before you go, as you know, I'm a huge believer in you knowing your business numbers. After all, it isn't about how much you sell, it's about what you keep. And the best way to grow your profits is to start diving in and understanding those business numbers. To help you on this journey, I have created the Know Your Business Numbers course. We will walk through how to read your profit and loss statement. You'll learn the key calculations that'll help ensure that you're making a healthy profit on all of your products or services.
plus a ton of other good stuff that'll help you learn how to use those business numbers to create even more sales and profits. Just check out the link below in the show notes or visit knowyourbusinessnumberscourse.com. So if you're ready to increase those profits, it's time you start diving into your business numbers.